Hello everyone, Tmmgamer here, and today I have the pleasure of bringing you another one of my football talk videos, the series where I spend a bit of time talking about real life football. Now, before I get into today's topic, as always, let's talk a little bit about the game in the background. This is a game against a typical sweaty team, and this is one of the sweatiest teams I've played against in a long time. He had Remy, he had Benteke, he had Clichy and Walker as fullbacks, he had Morales, he had Fellaini for the set pieces, and that's pretty much it. Mr. Sweat, cross the ball, whack it up to Benteke, whack it through to Remy, and that was basically his technique. And it's a pretty decent game actually, because it's a very high scoring game, it's end to end, and I think it's a good example of how to play against these filthy teams with a team which doesn't really have much pace in them. My team's not the quickest, but I make it work and end up putting in a good performance, so it's a good game to watch in the background. But today's topic is going to be about Aston Villa, and I've had a few requests to make a video about Aston Villa, because obviously, if you guys didn't know, I am an Aston Villa fan. I was a season ticket holder for a number of years until I went to university, and since I've come back, I've managed to go quite a few times to see them this season, just basically to check them out and see how well they've been playing. And I wanted to talk about Aston Villa because, fortunately, yesterday we actually managed to beat Hull City 3-1, which is all but guaranteed our future in the Premier League for next season, barring some absolutely miraculous goal scoring from Norwich against Chelsea and Arsenal. And I was actually watching the Chelsea-Norwich game, got to about 50 minutes through and got thoroughly bored and decided to quit. So knowing my luck, Norwich will stick 15 past Chelsea in the second half, and then I'll be chewing my fingers deep into the last weekend of the Premier League. But fingers crossed that doesn't happen from an Aston Villa point of view, and we're in the Premier League next season. I'm a little bit unsure of what the problem is at Aston Villa, because a lot of people blame Lambert, a lot of people blame Lerner for not investing, and you can understand why, but this has not just been one season or 2 seasons of lack of investment. This has been a long-seated problem, starting pretty much from when Martin O'Neill took over at the club. And everybody always remembers Martin O'Neill very fondly at Aston Villa. Did very well under him. We nearly made Champions League. We were right in the race for Premier League title one year, and then we had a massive collapse and ended up finishing 6th again. We've got 3 6th place finishes in a row, which compared to our current form was incredible. Everybody remembers that very fondly. And then what they remember is James Milner got sold. He got sold to Manchester City for 20 odd million plus Stephen Ireland, and Martin O'Neill wanted to reinvest the money in I think it was Aidan McGeady, actually, the player he specifically wanted, and Randy Lerner said no, and then Martin O'Neill basically threw his toys out the pram and left a couple of days before the start of the season, which really boned us. And from there, we had Kevin McDonald as manager for a little bit. Then we had Gerard Houllier, and he had to leave after a season due to heart problems. Then we had McLeish, and the less we talk about Alex McLeish, the better. Actually, there's one thing I did want to mention. Everybody in football said that it was because Alex McLeish came from Birmingham City that we hated him, and there's no doubt Aston Villa fans absolutely hated Alex McLeish as manager, and it didn't help that he came from Birmingham City, certainly, but the reason why we hated him was we were playing the worst football I have ever seen us play. He made some of the worst signings of all time. Alan Hutton is the worst player I have ever seen in the Villa shirt, up against some very stiff competition as well, and that's something I'm going to talk about in a few minutes. But McLeish's signings were dreadful. The only good signing he made was Shay Given, and Shay Given now doesn't even play for us because of the resurgence of Brad Guzan. But McLeish was absolutely dreadful for us. Dreadful. We gave him a chance. No, he didn't get booed. He didn't get any slack at the start of the season, nothing at all. We said, okay, he's our manager now, we have to support him. Let's get him in, let's see what he does. He played people out of position. He played Barry Bannon on the wing, and Barry Bannon is not a winger. He played horrible, negative football. And the thing is, if we ground out a few results, that would have been fine, because at least we go, well, we're not the most attractive team to watch, but occasionally we win a game. But we didn't even have that. We had nothing under Alex McLeish, and that's what I think pretty much everybody missed. And there was a few banners that were held up at the stadium during the latter reign of Alex McLeish saying things like, it's not where you've come from, it's where you're taking us. And that's absolutely true. He played horrible football, he got absolutely no results, and obviously when he started to play terribly, his past was brought up as an excuse for why we didn't like him, and that is completely untrue. But obviously Alex McLeish was a disaster for us, and then we got Paul Lambert in, and this is where we're at now with Paul Lambert at the club. The problem that Paul Lambert's had is he has not had a lot of money to spend. And a lot of people have said, oh, Lambert spent a huge amount of money. And that is just simply not true. Not true in the slightest. Martin O'Neill left this football club in a position where we had a wage bill that was vastly over what we could sustain. And this is the thing that I think a lot of people forget about Martin O'Neill, because people always say, oh, he bought James Milner to the club, he bought Ashley Young, all of these talented players, Stuart Downing, yada yada, even though Stuart Downing turned out to be very average, and we did incredibly well to get 20 million for him. But Martin O'Neill bought in a lot of players who were incredibly average, and he spent a lot of money on them. People like Emil Heskey, and people don't remember, Emil Heskey was on £50,000 a week. £50,000 a week to play for us. And he has been dreadful. He was a dreadful player for us. People like Habib Bey, Nicky Shorey, Curtis Davis, all of these players that he signed that people very conveniently forget, that cost a huge amount of money to get here and in wages and were dreadful for us. People like Stephen Ireland, who was brought in as part of the James Milner deal, on a lot of money, has done nothing for us. We are still trying to clear these people off our books. Again, Alex McLeish brought in players. Who did he bring in? He brought in Alan Hutton. Dreadful player. We're still trying to get him off our books. Who else did he bring in? Charles Nzogbia, who's played very, very poorly for us, and then we haven't even seen him this season. I mean, what has happened to Charles Nzogbia? Is he injured? Is he just not playing? What's happened? I have no idea. And this is, I think, the core of the problem. We have had a huge time where we've invested a lot of money in dross, and that's what it's been for us. I mean, people like Alan Hutton, people like Curtis Davis, Habib Bey, Emil Heskey were expensive flops for us, and there's no denying that. And that's left Randy Lerner in a position where he said no, and he said no to a manager who subsequently went on to Sunderland and spent a huge amount of money on expensive flops and got sacked for it. And now he's managing Ireland, which, fair play to him, good luck, whatever. At least he doesn't have any money to spend as Ireland manager, which is probably for the best. But this is the thing that I really wanted to say straight away when talking about Aston Villa, that Paul Lambert is in a very, very difficult position, mostly, really, because of the profligacy of Martin O'Neill and some of the terrible signings Martin O'Neill made. So that's one thing I wanted to say straight away, that you should not remember Martin O'Neill with rose-tinted spectacles on. He did very well for us in the league, but that came with a massive array of consequences, really, really damaging consequences for this football club. And as a result, as we've struggled to get rid of these massively overpaid flops, Paul Lambert has been in a position where he has not been able to spend money. If you look at the last 4 or 5 years of Aston Villa, we've sold Stuart Downing for over 20 million, we've sold James Milner for over 20 million, we've sold Ashley Young for nearly 20 million, and who've we brought in? Let's have a look, for example, at last year's signings. We bought in Libor Kozak for about 6 million. We bought in Joris Okore for about 4 million. We bought in Hellenius and Luna. Between them, they cost about 3 million. Leandro Bacuna cost 800,000, there or thereabouts. And Jed Steer cost £400,000. So altogether, that's 17.2 million, which on the face of it seems like a lot of money. Wayne Rooney in 1 year in wages earns £15.6 million. So he earns pretty much the amount of money in wages that we have spent on transfers. And when you remember that these players are on tiny, tiny wages compared to the playing squad that we had before, you begin to realise that actually we haven't had a lot of money. When you look at the players who've left the club recently, we've got rid of Jean McCoon, we've got rid of Bent, we've got rid of Barry Bannon, Stephen Ireland. Players like, for example, James Collins left, Stephen Warnock, Emil Heskey, like I've mentioned, Carlos Cuellar. These players were on vast, vast wages, huge wages, and the people we've bought to replace them aren't. Like, for example, how much is Ashley Westwood going to be on a week? 20,000 if he's lucky. Christian Benteke was on about 15,000, 20,000 before he had that very good season last year, and we upgraded his wages somewhat, but he's still not on a lot of money. He'll be on 30,000, 35,000, I reckon that was what it was rumoured to be. So he is on less money than Emil Heskey was on at this football club. So we have shrunk our wage budget dramatically. We have sold a huge, huge amount of players, a vast amount of players. and we've replaced them with people on a fraction of the wages from lower leagues. People like Matthew Loughton, who we signed from Sheffield United, or Joe Bennett from Middlesbrough, or Ashley Westwood from Crewe. Or if we don't sign people from Chesterfield or Crewe, we sign them from the French second division, like we signed Yakuba Silla. Or we get people from very cheap from minor European leagues, like Hellenius from Aalborg, or Bakuna from Groningen. These are not major signings. These are second-tier players. Let's be brutally honest. They've done a lot of good work for some of those players. We give our players a lot of stick at Aston Villa, and I think a lot of that is unfair because what are we asking them to do? We are asking players we've signed from League One to finish in the top half of the Premier League, and it's going to be very, very difficult for them to do that. We have to be realistic, and that's why I am not very critical of Paul Lambert, because Paul Lambert has been asked to do a job by Randy Lerner, and he's done that job. He has slashed the wage budget. He's kept us in the Premier League with people who've come through the youth system and people we've signed from the second tier of the French league. That's basically what he's done. He's shrunk the wage budget hugely whilst doing that. And to be fair to him as well, he has had incredibly bad luck with injuries. Just look at this season. Christian Benteke was out for a huge part of the season. He's out now. He's going to miss the World Cup. We've had Gabby Agbonlahor out injured, and people can criticise Gabby Agbonlahor. He's still a very important player for us. When Gabby Agbonlahor plays well, we play well as a team. He really does drag us forward through his just pace, and he's someone who cares about the football club. He's a local lad. He's always played for Aston Villa. He's come out several times and say, as long as Villa still want me, I'll quite happily play for them. He's a player who will actually put a shift in for us. You look at the players he signed in the summer. Libor Kozak, what happens? Serious season-ending injury, out he goes. Joris Okore, what happens? He comes in, looks very, very solid, looks like he's going to form a good partnership with Ron Vlaar. He's out for the season. This is what I'm trying to say. Lambert has not had the greatest amount of money to spend. He's spent he's spent some decent money on decent players. Benteke kept us up in the first season. He's still a very, very good player. He's had some problems with injury this year. Libor Kozak was the record scorer in the Europa League in the year we signed him. That's a decent signing. Okore was linked with Chelsea but decided not to go because he wasn't going to play. So we've snapped up another talented young centre-back who was unfortunately injured. This is the problem we've faced. We've faced a lot of bad luck. Some of Lambert's tactical decisions have been very questionable. For example, he plays Leandro Bakuna at right back a lot, and I don't understand why. Matthew Loughton, he had a bit of a dodgy start, and I thought it was a good thing that he dropped him because Matthew Loughton and Ashley Westwood were Lambert's babes, basically, and he was very, very reluctant to drop either of them, and he did drop Matthew Loughton at the start of the season. I think in the long run that will be very, very good for him, because I still think he's a decent player, and I'd quite like to see him get a bit of a bigger role in the side. But Lambert has had to wheel and deal. And just look at this January as well. Who did he sign? He signed Ryan Bertrand on loan, and he signed Grant Holt on loan. And the reason why he had to do this was because our defence was absolutely shambolic, and we'd had injuries to a lot of our strike force. And when you don't have any money to spend, it's very, very difficult to patch up such important areas of the squad. But he got in Bertrand on loan, which was a very, very good signing, and I think he's done very, very well since he's been here. And he got a player in Grant Holt who he knows a lot about. He knows he's not going to get any trouble from Grant Holt. He's going to be a hard worker when he comes on, and that's exactly what he's done for us. He's come on, he's put a shift in. He hasn't exactly set the world alight, but what are you going to expect? For a loan signing in January, or what are you going to expect? Not a huge amount. This is what he's been working with. We're at a bit of a turning point now for Aston Villa, because there are rumours flying around that Randy Lerner wants to sell the club, and to be honest, I think it would be a good thing if he does. He came in, he spent some money with us, there's no doubt about that. It didn't work, and now, as far as I'm concerned, it looks like he's not bothered anymore. And there's nothing worse than a half-hearted owner of a Premier League club. You cannot be that. The rumours in the pipeline that he's going to sell it to one of his buddies that he's known from the Cleveland Browns, basically. So hopefully we could get taken over, and people might say, oh well, what about financial fair play? How can we spend all this money? If financial fair play was actually enforced, Real Madrid and Barcelona would never play in the Champions League again, because they are just funded on loans, basically. Loans they never have to repay. So financial fair play is a joke and completely irrelevant in my opinion, and which is a shame, because I think we're the only club who is actually paying attention to it, which it's really screwing us over. Let's be brutally honest with this. But we're in a position now where we require investment, and there's no doubt about that, because our playing squad is criminally thin. It is just so thin. if you look at our defence, our starting defence isn't too shabby. I mean, if we assume Bertrand stays, which I think would be a fantastic signing if we manage to keep him, Akore and Voir in the middle, and then we'd have Loughton at right back. He's young, he's a bit unsure every now and again, but solid. He was one of our best players last season, so let's not write him off. Beyond that, who have we got? We've got Kieran Clark, who has just not developed at all. When I first saw Kieran Clark come through, I was really, really pleased. I thought, he's going to look pretty decent. He's got into the Irish national team a few times. I thought he looked decent, but he's just come off a cliff again. Same with Nathan Baker. Nathan Baker is... He's very bad, and I don't think there's any way you can dress it up. He's super keen, but he's just so clumsy. He just gives away so many bad fouls. And he switches off at key times, or he clatters people in the area for clumsy penalties, and perhaps he'll iron that out with age. But right now, we can't rely on him to be a starting player in the Premier League for us regularly, because he'll just make too many mistakes. Moving up into midfield, we've got Westwood, Delph, and El Amadi, who start a lot of the games. Delph has been our best player this season. I really do like Fabian Delph. Very, very good player, and he's been important for us. He's managed to cut his yellow cards out of his game as well, which is nice, because he was always a bit of a walking yellow card. It's a bit like when, not if, he's going to get booked this game. And alongside him, you've got Al Amadi, who's been average, and Westwood again, who we've signed from Crewe. This is a League One player, been thrown in at the deep end, and I have to say he's done all right. But beyond that, who do we have in midfield? No one. We've got like Yakuba Silla, who doesn't play. And that's pretty much it in the centre mid. So we need a centre mid. Look at the wings. Who do we have on the wings? We've got Gabi Agbonlahor and Andreas Weimann, who are both strikers playing out of position. Then we've got Mark Albrighton, who Lambert can't decide whether he wants to keep or wants to leave. He keeps farming him out on loan and getting him back. And I have to say, Albrighton's played well since he's come back from his loan. But apart from that, again, who do we have? Very few people. And up front, we've got Benteke and Kozak, both of them currently injured. And that's it. And it's just... Our squad is paper thin, and if we get 3 injuries, we're in massive trouble. That's basically what we've had this year. We've had Benteke injured, we've had Akore injured, we've had Kozak injured for the majority of the season, and then the rest of our squad is just thin. And if we get one more injury, we're in dire trouble. And we'll have to play Callum Robinson every game, or like I say, Nathan Baker starts all the games, which is just a big, big problem. So I'm still not sure if I want to see Paul Lambert continue. Because, like I mentioned, he's had a very, very difficult job, but he's not helped himself. Because he comes out every week and says the boys played well, they work hard, etc., etc. And we're losing games. And we're losing games not even looking likely, which is a big problem. If you go out there, you give it a good shot, you lose 1-0, 2-1, you've had a few chances, you go, yeah, never mind, at least we tried. At least we looked like we cave monkeys. But we don't even do that a lot of the time. We go out there, we flop around, we get beaten very comfortably, and then Lambert goes and says, I can't fault the boys' effort. It's just like, Lambert, you're not helping yourself. Just stop saying that. Yesterday against Hull, we actually put a really good performance in. We thoroughly deserved to win that game, and it was important that we did, because we could have very conceivably have gone down if we hadn't have won that game. So... fingers crossed, as long as Norwich don't score 20 goals or whatever it is, we're going to be in the Premier League next season. But we definitely need investment. And if Randy Lerner is debating selling the club, please do it immediately. Don't wait until 2 weeks before the start of the season, because uncertainty is something we don't need over the summer. We need everything to come out. We need it to be done immediately. Ideally, Paul Faulkner needs to just go away somewhere. Paul Faulkner is really not... If you don't know who he is, he's the chief executive of Aston Villa, basically. He's just not helped. Again, he comes out with his yearly statement this time of the year saying he backed the manager, and then just when the season tickets come up for renewal, we get linked with players like Javier Hernandez and Lewis Holtby, and these are players who would definitely help us out. But are we realistically going to sign them with Faulkner as chief executive and Lerner as the owner? It's very, very unlikely. So that's what I think we need. I think we need a new owner, because Lerner's obviously not interested in it anymore. We need 3 or 4 players, and that's what I mean. We don't need 10 players, because we have the nucleus of a decent side. We've still got a lot of good young players who, with a few more years and with a few experienced heads around them, could actually become something decent. So we don't need major catastrophic surgery, but we just need a few quality players in a few important positions, and then we can look to progress, because we've got everything there. We've got a big stadium, we've got great training facilities, we've got a decent fan base. We're the second city. We're the only club in the second city in the Premier League. West Brom, they aren't in Birmingham. They're in West Bromwich, which is not Birmingham for everyone who's not from the Midlands. So we're not in dire straits. There are clubs in a lot worse position than we are, but we definitely need a little bit of a kick in the right direction, and hopefully we get it this summer. So guys, thank you so much for listening to the video. I really hope you've enjoyed it. I've gone a little bit over time there, so there's going to be a little bit of just still screen of the stadium, I think, at the end of this. But I think it was important for me to talk a little bit about Aston Villa, because it's a team that I passionately care about. You know, obviously I support them, so I want them to do well. And it frustrates me because there's a lot of stuff reported about Aston Villa which is just wrong on a lot of levels. And I know quite a few Villa fans who just don't think and don't express opinions which are even remotely similar to the stuff you get peddled in the media, and it's very, very disappointing. I can remember one story in particular from I think it was last season or season before that, Jeff Stelling wrote on Sky Sports News saying, why aren't we playing, we've got all these kids playing who aren't doing particularly well, why aren't we playing Alan Hutton and Stephen Warnock? It's just, I'll tell you why we aren't playing them, because they are flat out dreadful. So have you not seen them play, Jeff? It's just, yeah, sometimes I get really frustrated by stuff like this, because the lack of knowledge is so shocking from some of these so-called pundits in inverted commas. So I've had 1 point too many, I think, when it comes to Aston Villa, but I just want to see some positive progress. I don't want to be battling down, surviving with 2 weeks to go like we did this season and the season before. But saying that, I don't expect us to win the league. I'm not asking for much. If we finish 12th, that would be decent. I'd say if we finish 12th next season, I'd see that as a very, very good season. And then possibly we could start to build and do things slowly, because we're not just going to go out and spend £300 million and win the league, are we? But a little bit of hope. That's all I'm asking for. Just a bit of hope. And I don't think that's too much to ask. So once again, thank you so much for listening to the video. And as always, have a great day.